Menkaure, the third pyramid on Giza, the small one that people mostly don't pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
But it has this very interesting stonework at the base of it. Like Menkaure, just like the other pyramids there, are built out of the core material. All this stuff up here is limestone, right? This is all limestone blocks. But down here, I can move in.
So this is the smallest one in the line of three?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Look at those granite blocks. Like, some people in here for scale. These are huge. And these would be the casing stones or the facing stones, right? So the other two pyramids were also cased in this beautiful Tura limestone. It's a very hard white limestone, and they were flattened all the way up. And, there's old writings about how they would shine like mirrors in the desert before the casing stones were gone because they were so...
And they were stripped off and looted.
Yeah, there was earthquakes and then they're gone. Yeah,
the way to look at this is like this is the roof of the structure.
Yeah.
That casing.
Right.
So you build the interior of the structure you can build it with much softer stone. In some cases, they built them with mud brick. But you then case that in a very hard stone. Tura limestone is a very hard, silica-rich form of limestone. So it's much harder. It erodes way slower. Granite obviously is even harder than that, and it takes forever to erode. But that's like you're putting a roof on the structure to protect the structure, and then when it's gone, you can see that the core masonry there is just heavily
getting degraded.
Now, do we know if the interior of these smaller pyramids is anything similar to the Great Pyramid?
They have passageways and chambers. We haven't been in Menkaure yet. We're going to do that this year.
But do we have diagrams? Like we have diagrams of all the all the chambers. So we know what the insides of these look like. They're mapped out.
For the most part, if I recall correctly, the Great Pyramid is the only one that has any substantial structures in the body of the pyramid itself. The rest of them mostly go underground. So it seems like the
Bent Pyramid has some pretty substantial
Yes, you're right.
structures
The Bent Pyramid has structures inside of it.
I've scanned that
as well.
one.
Yeah. But most of the time, it's just see the entrance back here. This is the entrance right here.
Okay.
So this is just a descending passageway. It basically goes straight down and into the ground, and then there's chambers way down in there. The Great Pyramid does this as well, but there's a descending passage that goes up as well, and then you have the Grand Gallery and the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber up inside the body of the pyramid. Mm-hmm. But when you go into Khafre, the middle pyramid, it just has a descending passageway, and you're down underneath it.
But there's nothing in the guts of the main pyramid.
Yeah. But anyway, so you're noticing these blocks, and we're talking about this because of was it easy, right? This is not insubstantial amounts of stone, as you can see from the people standing here. These are huge blocks. They have to be tilted, and they're also, notice how they're kind of puffy or like pillowy.
Yeah.
So they were leaving extra material on because they were going to flatten it like this. Let's see, I'll move forward.
Oh,
here.
some of them are flat and perfect.
Yeah, just right around the entrance. And also notice all these nubs.
Yeah,
you see all
those
these?
are the same nubs on the ones in South America and Central America.
Yeah, they have these all over the world. There's a lot of interesting ideas about these. Kyle and I kind of lean towards the idea that they're functional, like they were used for maneuvering, and then they were cut off during the finishing process. But here you can see the part of the flattened face. Mm-hmm. Oops, let me zoom back out and move here. And then there's some reverse nubs, insets, for grabbing this block. But look at all this extra material. Look at this huge, and granite's heavy. So you're talking about a lot of extra material on here. I could come back to some of it, but here's the flattened face.
So how come the rest of it's not flattened like this?
Well, that's the question. That is a great question. It's like, why didn't they finish the job? But there's this big square of flattened area right here in front of the entrance. Which seems funny, if this is a tomb and you're trying to sort of hide the entrance and everything like that, well, this makes it relatively obvious where the door is. Right?
Yes.
And also because the other two large pyramids had casing stones all over them, and those were completely flattened out.
They were perfect.
Yeah, they were finished. This just looks like it was not completed. Like they were in the process, or they were using this surface as a survey point. This is the other thing we've discussed.
Yeah. We actually have some evidence after walking all the way around this pyramid, so you can imagine that one of these blocks, this flattened blocks, because it has a top and bottom, and then it has this beveled, this angled face, then there's going to be a certain cut degree angle.
Yeah.
A flat surface here and a flat surface there.
Right.
That the other blocks will not have because they're all puffy and pillowy on the front. So when we were walking around the pyramid, there's just piles and piles of granite laying on the sides.
They've been coring it.
Cored out. So we were looking for blocks with this angle, 2 flat surfaces,
like
with
a
this
prism
angle.
stone. Yeah,
and we found them.
Yep. Around the
other 2 sides that are not uncovered. So I think that there was a flattened. We think that there's a pretty good case to be made that there was a flattened surface about this size on each
face
side of the pyramid.
There is one on the other side, which we'll look at in a minute.
Yeah.
Like this is the north side, so around on the east side of the pyramid, there is another flattened face. And the other interesting thing, just to point out, is the only reason we have this pile of casing stones here is because as people were quarrying the stuff above it, the granite off here, they were making piles of rubble down here, and it basically just covered this stuff up. And it became too difficult to dig out, so they just left it. So it still survives because it got buried under the other quarrying rubble.
Intentionally buried.
There you go. Intentionally buried, right?
Right.
So, but the other point,
So if they were going to smooth the stones, they would start from the top? Maybe
you would want to, yeah.
You'd think that you'd want to start from the top stones.
Right.
But you have to build it from the bottom. So this is the thing. How do you maintain, as you're going up, the integrity of this flat surface as you're stacking these blocks up? In other words, where as you're setting each stone in, it has enough material on it that when you flatten it out, there isn't going to be a hole somewhere.
Right.
So maybe you flatten out a square area at the first few courses at the base to give yourself a survey platform so that you can check as you go up using whatever method you got.
A really simple method to check the distance from the bottom of this to the top of it, and then extend that further out as you make new courses. Like, do we have enough stone sticking out where they actually meet each other in this crevice? Is that far enough out so that
right
when
here
we flatten it, it won't be a void?
So there's no voids.
See this deep crevice between the stones here and here? You want to make sure that when you flatten it to here, there's not actually going to be like a hole in here somewhere.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can do it by, you can just put a couple of like rods in here with string and pull, and you end up pulling the string all the way up, and you're just checking distances as you go up. Do we have enough stone in each place?
And you can move it this way and that way.
Yeah, you can sweep it back and forth and check the whole face. And so that was the idea, is like, did they have 4 of these on each face? And you have 1 facing crew per side of the pyramid. And they just didn't have time to finish the job.
Which is another interesting...
Yeah.
So it seems like they built the Great Pyramid first, and then this was the last one.
Or maybe maybe Khafre, the central pyramid, was the one built first. Ben actually thinks that's the first one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's interesting because that one, the other great thing about that one is it has a couple of rows at the very bottom of granite casing stones that have been finished. And they are, they're just unbelievably magnificent, just perfectly cut, beautiful granite casing stones. And then as you walk around that pyramid, there's a row of granite rubble all the way around the thing because people were cutting them up to take these beautiful faces that have been cut. Because the source of this granite's 500 miles away. So if you're somebody living near this area...
That's so wild.
Yeah.
You need to fucking get a plane to go. You need to fly there when you're traveling.
Yeah.
That's
not
how far
wild.
it is.
It's not wild. This is just what people do.
It's the easiest way to... Yeah.
Totally natural.
Like, listen, when you want to build a cool structure in the desert, you bring stone from 500 miles away and you stack it up into a triangle.
Yes.
It's like the simplest thing to do. Like, everybody does it. It's crazy how that
really
becomes
puts
a story.
it into perspective when you're there and you realize, like you guys were telling me last night. Yeah, we had to catch a plane to the quarry.
Yeah.
That's how fucking far it is.
Well, we catch a plane and then we have to ride a boat for 4 days to get to the quarry. Yeah.
How do I get it?
What do you want to do?
I just want to go back to the original point of bringing this up, the perspective to show you how much stone was removed here. So I was wanting to show this one photo because it really gives you an idea of why it looks to me why it was easy for them, because you wonder to yourself, how much work would it take to take away that much stone to make that flat surface? Now the next photo should give you an idea of how much that is.
Look how much material that is.
It's a lot.
It's wider than this guy's shoulders. I mean, in some cases it's up to like 2 feet, 18 inches at least. Wow. They were removing of that granite. Now they weren't.
This is granite.
This is granite. They weren't just cutting it with a saw.
It's like,
how do you get a saw in there?
Yeah, go back to this. Look, notice that there's a radius.
They're grinding it away somehow.
You see how it curves up. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like there's you can imagine like just putting a giant belt sander down on this thing.
Right.
You know, and then they're removing this much material. That's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of stone. This is granite. That's a lot. You know, think of trying
just
to pick
the
up
waste.
Yeah.
Like think of the amount of waste that would create on the ground.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be piles of it, especially if you're doing an entire pyramid like this.
So is there a evidence of like layers that they had to take it away in layers, or is it just one go?
We don't know.
We don't know.
There is no evidence for this. The problem is because there has been occupation and people working on this site for thousands and thousands of years after this pyramid was supposedly built. I mean, it's so hard to figure out who did what.
This is the other thing, you know, just to put this in perspective, this is like fourth dynasty Old Kingdom. Like all these big pyramids are in that area, right? So it's like the beginning of the dynastic period of Egypt. So in the oldest part of their civilization. You know, New Kingdom would have looked at these people and thought of them as ancients, the people who built this stuff. So this is, you know, so you're talking about they start out with these monuments, practically. The other thing to point out here, this is really cool because, you know, now we've looked at all this. You see how big the blocks are, how much stone they're removing, and then you see something like this. We zoom in on that, where they've just,
Oh my God.
you know,
Holy crap.
so you're setting these giant blocks in, and you're also like, yeah, just make that next one, you know, a 1/4 inch down from the one next to it. Because it's easy, like you were
That's
saying.
the point. Yeah. It's like
This makes it look easy.
at least whatever method that it seems like the method they used to do this, just doing stuff like this was easy. I can't help but think, I mean, people always want to know, you know, was this a geopolymer? Was this whatever? Was there some way? To me, it looks like grinding. Like that, if they had something connected to that stone that they were laying down, the one that they're putting on there, that they could vibrate that stone. It would eat away both faces, all three faces that the stone is going up against, including its own, and basically make the mating faces perfectly match each other.
Yeah, so let me back up here, and
That's what I wondered.
We can talk about that a little bit because there's evidence here, and then there's something in Peru we can look at about that as well. So let me go to this slide. This one here. So see the blocks at the top here. This is what we're looking at. These would have been sitting up against each other when before the destruction and all the quarrying happened.
Right.
So this face of this block sat against that one. Probably this face sat up against here. I can probably zoom in a bit. Now, what's interesting, it's hard to tell with this picture, but these faces aren't flat. They're
curved.
They have these very slight curves, like the side of that block does something like this. And then the block that it matches has the matching slight curves. Yeah, it's hard. So let me
What? So
let me switch over to
that's the
some
point.
of the
If you
Peru
take
stuff.
two stones, they can have whatever face, and you start grinding them together. Eventually, their faces are going to match. They won't be
Yeah.
flat; they'll be curved, but the contours of that curve will match each other. That's why I'm like, to me, I'm not saying that they ground the stones together, but that's what it would look like.
Yeah.
So these were sent to us.
How the fuck did they do that?
I have no idea.
These were sent to us by one of the people that listens to our show. He's been to Peru, and he took these pictures specifically. So you can see, it's tough to tell, but there's a big block here and a big block here, and you can see that the inside face of this block, the corner goes out on the top here and goes in on the bottom, and there's a matching face, a complex curve of the block next to it.
It's almost like the
It's
face has a
twisted.
twist in it
Right.
on both sides that match.
Here's another picture of the same area. You can see that this interior face of this block has a twist, and it matches the twist of this block and the one it's sitting into at the bottom.
I don't know how to explain that.
It's
The only thing that I can think of is that they're being ground together. I don't know any other way to make that happen unless you had a computer controlling the device that was cutting the stones and making each one exact. But if you had a computer that was cutting them exact, why would you leave the bulk of material on the front to be flattened later? why not just cut it exact? If you know what I'm saying? If you were so good at laying these stones that you weren't worried about it.
Right.
That's the other thing that's interesting about leaving all the extra material in the front is you can also look at it as a protective layer.
Yeah.
You know that your final finished product is going to have this glossy, polished surface that's completely flat. You want that protected by multiple layers of stone during the construction process, not layers, multiple inches of stone. So you drop a block against it, it hits it, right?
Yeah, and if a block was dropped near the top of the pyramid and it had tumbled down, I mean, it's going to do a lot of damage.
Dent
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
The very last thing you'd want to do is basically just cut down the edge of it.
Right. So just like painting the inside, you start at the top and you paint your way down.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the last thing you do, right? So it's the finishing work. And a lot of times these places look like it's the finishing work that didn't get completed. And that's why you see things like nubs, because the nubs would be gone once it's finished.
Right. For people who don't know, like the origins of Göbekli Tepe, and obviously there's the theory that it was deliberately buried, but you guys come up with you guys found out, you guys dug very deep.
Yes.
And you found out it's nuanced. It wasn't necessarily just buried all at once. It was like over 1,000 years or more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so the thing about the deliberate burying is it's very mysterious sounding, and so when you're looking at mysterious stuff or looking for mysterious things, stuff like that can affect the thinking on the entire site, because then you begin to think, well, why would they do this? Like, what would drive them to build something like this and then purposefully bury the whole thing and leave it, So if that didn't happen, then that's very important to know. And the thing is that
we wondered about this for so long.
We
like
talked
when you
about
hear when you hear that they intentionally buried this massive site, you're just like, what? Why could that be? And so we were going down these roads of like, what was it? A time capsule? Were they trying to preserve a message for the future?
Yeah.
This became like a common idea, people, because this is what you ask yourself when this
it's
is
like
a
buried
monumental
treasure.
task.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why were they doing it? Were they hiding it? Were they trying to preserve it for the future? All these narratives pop up because of that. And I mean, this goes back to like my earliest interest in the ancient world was looking for arrowheads here. And you start to learn what campsites look like, what human occupation sites look like, in the Neolithic times or whatever, when they were just working with rough stone tools. And you can see what their debitage looks like. And that's when we first walked up to the site of Göbekli Tepe. It was almost instant. I was just like, this is midden.
Yeah, you can see it in the picture there.
What is midden?
Midden is basically human occupation layers. They're layers of sediment that are all of the bits and pieces of debris and debitage from normal human activity. Now, obviously, there are walls and structures in there.
This is a funny question, because I figured we would talk about this, and it's interesting because Kyle learned about midden, and then Kyle and I would go on arrowhead hunting trips, and we'd be walking, and he'd be like, "Oh, this is midden," and I'd look down, I'm like, "What are you looking at? Like,
It's just dirt.
what is the difference?" Right? And eventually you learn to see it, and it's a lot of times it's a bunch of very similar sized rocks, like that are kind of squarish, and you just sort of recognize it. You're like, this is somebody made this pile of stones, and it's just very old. They weren't carving the rocks or anything like that. It's just that when you bring a bunch of stones in and you make fires with them, they sort of break in regular patterns, and you end up with kind of a gravel, like a cobble-sized gravel.
Okay.
They just look very regular. It doesn't look natural where everything can be just randomly different sizes.
Right.
They're all sort of very similar, like fist-shaped, fist-sized rocks, and you recognize, there's a pile of these, covered in grass. It's very old. And then you start digging in it. And I mean, you don't have to dig very much, and you find specific markers. Like there will be a certain kind of shell. At least in the States, you find this. There will be a certain kind of snail shell, all in the midden.
Yeah, it just depends on the types of materials that they were around.
Yeah.
At the time.
Okay.
Like the dirt, for example, looks a little more sooty. It's like got ash in it. It's got a lot of charcoal. But there's all this stuff that people collected. There are, tiny little broken shards of flint just everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Well, that was the material they were working with. So if you were in a place where they were working with quartz, then you would be finding chunks and little tiny bits of quartz everywhere. If that's the stone they were working with.
Or obsidian.
or obsidian.
Yeah.
So there's another example of we were at a place that we had basically confirmed was an occupation site. We was just like, okay, yes, people were living here. We were finding flint. We were finding all this stuff. We're walking away after about an hour of looking around, and somebody finds a little piece of obsidian.
Tiny,
I'm like, turn
tiny
around.
little one. Yeah.
We're going back. There's an obsidian arrowhead up here.
Yeah.
There's no reason
Somewhere.
for this piece of obsidian flake to be on this hill. It doesn't belong here. It's not from here.
There's no volcanoes anywhere nearby.
Humans brought it here.
Yeah.
Is that
And
where
they
obsidian
made
comes
something
from?
out of it.
It's volcanic. Yeah.
So it's stuff. It's little tiny things like that. And sure enough, we found a work piece of obsidian there.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You found an obsidian arrowhead?
It's not complete. It's a
Okay.
little tiny bird point like a dart.
And where was this?
I'm not going to tell you about that. It was in Arizona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was near.
Secret spot in Arizona.
Where was that?
We were,
It was near Sedona.
yeah, Sedona. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
So
outside of Sedona.
when you the first time you pulled up to, so which part of is this Göbekli
This is
Tepe the proper where now there's
Yes.
a big dome over the top?
Yeah, this is
Yes.
before the.
Okay.
That chamber right there. That's enclosure C.
Yeah,
I
the one in
believe.
front there. Yeah.
So
D is the one to the right.
to the right, yeah. So you can see the obviously there are rock walls, and a lot of the stones that you're seeing that are just kind of bigger ones are probably broken down rock walls. But when you look closer at that material, you can tell that it's midden. It's like full of little tiny flint flakes from a people who were working flint every day of their lives making tools. There are pieces of grinding stones, which were they were made of basalt.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a basalt outcrop within like a kilometer of this site. So they were going down to this basalt outcrop, which is basalt is a volcanic stone as well. And it's a good grinding stone. So they were making grinding stones for grinding whatever, grain, ochre. They ground all kinds of stuff. They ground a massive amount of stuff based on the number of grinding stones found in this place. In fact, the archaeologists were blown away. They were like, why? Like, they even did this pretty cool experiment where they got people to grind on one of these. They made their own grinding stones, just like the ones at Göbekli Tepe, and they would grind for 8 hours in a day to see how much material that they came up with. And it was enough to feed like 5 people.
Really?
One guy. And so
One guy for 8 hours.
Yeah. So based on the amount of
One
grinding
college
stones.
kid who's never done it before, grinding for 8 hours can feed 5 people.
So they were just blown away. They're like, there are way too many grinding stones here to support whatever population may have been nearby. So what the hell were they doing? They were manufacturing a lot of stuff, whoever these people were that had the grinding stones. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's connected to who built this place, but there are broken grinding stones all over it, and broken arrowheads, broken flint shards. So people were living and working there all the way up to fairly modern times. I mean, to at least medieval times. And I mean, it's being farmed right now. So technically, they're still there. People never left.
Yeah, see the trees up in the upper top there? That's an orchard.
Those are olive trees.
Yeah.
So the radiocarbon dating here says it's at least the farthest back it goes is how old again?
It's like, oh man.
God, look at the landscape there. The view there is just unbelievable.
I'm just going to say roughly 12,000 years old.
Yeah.
Roughly 12,000 years old.
Now, they had a lot of difficulty in the dating. They already had, for I don't know how many decades, an established,
Oh, wow. What a great view.
a well-established dating of artifacts by style. Okay?
Yeah. It's
So
Okay.
in the whole Anatolian area, they have been digging in midden piles, human occupation layers, looking at styles of flint points, arrowheads, tools, and had all this, and then had very good carbon dates from those layers in multiple different sites, corroborating the evidence of each one, so that they had a well-established time period for the types of arrowheads you would find. So if you pick up this type of arrowhead, they could instantly say, well, that's 8,000 years old because of the style.
Okay.
At the very bottom layers of Göbekli Tepe, they were finding the arrowheads of a people that were 12,000 years old.
And how do they know those people were 12,000 years old?
because of the dates from other sites.
Because they had dug so many other sites all around Anatolia
Yeah.
Okay.
that had those arrowheads in layers that had carbon datable materials that showed that date.
Okay.
So like many, many times over at many different sites, when they found those arrowheads and they carbon dated something from the same layer, they would get the same date. So it's pretty good corroborating evidence that those arrowheads are consistent with a date of roughly 12,000 years. So when they get to the bottom, the archaeologists looking at the bottom layers of Göbekli Tepe are like, this is 12,000 years old. The burial layers, not the stonework, but the layers at the very bottom that start to build up of dirt, right, that are burying the site. Now, in some cases...
So that means the stonework is older, or
It
newer?
has to be at least
At least
At least
old.
that
yeah,
old.
Yeah.
It
Can't be it can't really be younger unless there's something another drastic that like they dug through all that stuff and
And the idea is that the people that were making and using these arrowheads were just like very primitive hunter-gatherers that would not be capable.
Up until this point, that's who they were. You see what I'm saying? Up until the point of the discovery of Göbekli Tepe,
That's what they were
those hunter-gatherers were considered primitive hunter-gatherers
Right.
who never really built anything
Right.
astonishing.
yeah.
And they didn't
Definitely
even
not
have
monumental.
They didn't
Yeah.
have pottery. The name of this culture is called the PPNA, Pre-Pottery Neolithic A, because
Yeah.
there's a PP and B.
Pre-pottery
Right.
Neolithic A.
Yeah.
So they didn't have pottery, yet they were making gigantic standing stone circles by flattening bedrock. I mean, they took a slope of bedrock and flattened it,
Yeah, see
made it level.
if you look at in enclosure C there, you see the little pedestal that the central stone is on.
Yes.
Yeah, see how it's on a pedestal and then
Yeah.
around it is flat? That is smoothed, flattened limestone bedrock. It isn't.
Oh wow!
The pedestal itself
Yeah.
is still the bedrock. It's
So
not like
they basically cut out all the negative stone bedrock around that
Yes.
pedestal.
Yeah. And then they cut a slot into the pedestal and then slotted that standing stone into it.
What?
Yeah. So it's not a simple construction, and it the floors of the enclosures are smooth and beautiful, and even I don't know if I can't remember if this one, but in some cases the sides of the pedestal are decorated in
Yes.
relief carvings. So you there's like
high
a row.
relief?
It's not high. It's like mid
Okay.
relief, but it's
But they are sticking out.
Yeah,
It's
they
not like
stick
they're-
out.
It's not like they're cutting the thing into the stone. They're cutting the stone away and leaving the carving
Right.
there is a high relief when it's almost it's a sculpture of a cat.
behind that pillar.
Yeah, it's directly behind it there.
You can't see it in this photo.
Yeah, but it's amazing work.
How much deeper do you think it goes? How much? How
Well,
much?
that's the bedrock, so it
That's the
seems like
bedrock
the bottom.
there.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
And-
the bottom.
yeah,
In some places, there's a lot of tunnels in the bedrock, not at Göbekli Tepe, but in this area of Turkey. They were tunneling into bedrock.
Notice this in the picture here. This is another thing to point out. They had these portal stones where they had cut this. So you imagine you cut a big square slab and then you completely cut the middle of it out to make a portal stone.
We
That was broken.
That
didn't-
one in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't get to go to the museums, but I've seen some photographs of portal stones like this that have high relief carvings of like cats standing on the edge of that portal, reaching over as though they might be drinking out of a pool in the center of the portal. Beautiful
Yeah.
works,
Yeah, so when we went, the earthquake and flood had just happened in Turkey, so we couldn't.
Oh yeah.
So
Ben
all the
was telling me
museums
about that.
Yeah, so the museums were closed, and they had moved 40,000 crates of artifacts out of the museum.
Dude, a ton of people died in that
Yes,
in that earthquake.
A lot of people. Yeah. Yeah. See the high relief cat there? Or,
Oh my god, that's nuts.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're most interested in the building techniques. There's
Look
like
at that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
it's
So
amazing.
think about this: like to make this pillar, the person at the quarry had to leave a sizable chunk of stone sticking out of the side of that pillar.
So that the artist had material to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's this is thoughtful. This is planning. The guy at the quarry may not be the guy who carved this cat or whatever this thing is. I doubt that it's the same person. So you have to have engineering and planning. And there's actually some new data coming out by some scientists that looking at the entire layout of the stone circles that suggests the entire site was planned. The original narrative was that the original idea was that one circle was built and used for a while, and then they sort of like, they put all this stuff into sort of a religious context. Like, well, it has to be a religion. Why else would you build a stone
it's
circle?
ritual, it's religion, it's yeah.
No atheists ever build stone circles.
Apparently. No atheist ever builds beautiful temple buildings or stone circles or monuments.
Which could be true. I don't know.
Maybe they don't.
But it's like they do all these rituals, and then it's like, okay, the rituals are done, the gods are appeased, bury that circle, dig another one, build another circle. This was the early on ideas. But now it looks like the entire site was planned.
And it's interesting because when you start reading the the papers, with the artifacts and the carvings, they have
totems.
The totems are strange.
Wow, that is sick.
Yeah. With the artifacts and the carvings, it looks like each enclosure may have had a specific animal type associated with it. So you have like the circle, the enclosure of the cat, the enclosure of the boar, the enclosure of the bird, the enclosure of the serpent, the enclosure of the fox, right? And so it's like you start to think of like, is this a kind of
magic school?
Yeah, it's
What
like
is your guys' wildest theory on what the fuck it was?
I think it might actually be.
I think the Gryffindors are going to beat the Slytherins.
The Gryffindors, which is too bad because clearly we're part of Slytherin, right?
Oh God,
Brothers of the Serpent. But it's. I mean, I really like the idea that the standing stones themselves, at least the central pillars and the flattened platforms, may be very, very old, far older than even the artifacts and found in there. Because that's the thing. When you dig into the archaeological papers on this, they do say, specifically, they say the dates that we get from the lithics, which would be the arrowheads, the PP&A stuff, from the pottery, and also from dating organic material in the mortar of the rough stone walls at the very bottom, give us these early dates of 12,000 before present, cannot date the megalithic architecture. It just doesn't give you the dates for that stuff because it could have been there before that.
The big T pillars.
Yes.
Yeah, and the shaping of the bedrock.
Right.
Also.
So is it possible that that somebody built this stuff a long time ago and then they just disappeared or went somewhere else or whatever, and then later peoples found it and started rebuilding it, and then some of the outer smaller pillars are their attempts to recreate. So in other words, they're learning some of these techniques, and then they live here. They build the rough stone walls, then maybe they cover them over, who knows,
So we kind of came up with this idea that I love this idea, the idea of ancient archaeologists.
Yeah. There is evidence that people
Think about what archaeologists do. I mean, the people that have come here and dug out this site, they have excavated the site. They've stood up pillars. They've tried to rebuild some rock walls. So when I look at this site from a construction standpoint, these rock walls between the pillars, those don't look like they belong. The building style doesn't match.
Right.
The rock walls are not shaped stones. They're just sort of whatever size and shape that they are. Mm-hmm. They use mortar. They don't have carving on them. They used plaster, supposedly. And in a lot of cases, the rock walls cover up the carvings on the pillars. So it looks to me like someone came in and tried to restore an already ancient and dilapidated site. And so they would be doing what modern archaeologists do. They come in, they find this just pile of rubble, and then they start lining up the blocks and numbering them, reorganizing them, try to rebuild the entire temple or whatever it is. And why do we do this in the first place? Because we're interested in our past. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if some people 12,000 years ago found this site and were like, we've got to see what this was all about.
12,000 years ago, that was right in the middle of the Younger Dryas, right?
Right at the
right
end.
after the end of it, just after.
12,000 was the very end of it.
Yeah.
And it lasted for 1,000 years, right?
Like
11,600 or something like that.
Yeah, 11,006 would be the end of the Younger Dryas, something like that. And
yeah, you're right.
So yeah, then you're looking at people, this would be just after, right? The end of it, I'm pretty sure. 10,000 something BC.
So this was built after.
Yeah. Well, the dates for the lithics and the bottoms of the walls, Like we don't know when that's what I'm trying to say. Like it must be may be much older than that.
So these ancient archaeologists could have been after the Younger Dryas,
right?
Trying to figure out what this was and trying to preserve it, and
could be
look into our past.
There is evidence that later peoples came and dug down into the midden, specifically into the. If you look at enclosure C again, that one, see how the top of that pillar is broken?
Yeah,
and the pillar down on the lower right, the big one down there, is also busted. There's two huge pillars there, and they're broken. You can see all the shattered pieces lying around in the bottom of the enclosure there. Somebody specifically around, was it 6,000 BC?
I think something like that.
6,000 BC. So, 4,000 to 6,000 years after the site was no longer in use, somebody came along and specifically dug a hole down to the tops of those pillars and smashed them and then reburied the site.
At least that's what it indicates. We don't know if they really smashed them, but
right.
It could be that someone smashed them.
Yeah. What was the term they used for that?
Iconoclasm.
Iconoclastic. Yeah. So
I wonder, thinking about the earthquake that just happened, I wonder how many of those earthquakes has this had to survive?
Right. That would be one reason to bury it on purpose if you didn't want it to, if you're like, I'm not going to be here to take care of it anymore, but you bury it so the earthquakes won't destroy it.
Yeah, it could protect it, huh?
Yeah.
But really, the burial looks more like collapses of the midden in something maybe like the heavy rainfall that they got.
Yeah.
Because you can see at the site, you can see that they have used sandbags and all this stuff to shore up the walls around the excavation site, the modern excavation of this site.
Okay.
They're trying to prevent all of this midden and soil and rocks and rubble from falling back into these enclosures.
Right.
So if these enclosures were already, like at the time, maybe covered in midden, and people dug them out, then the midden would collapse back into it and, of course, be jumbled up. That's the other problem with the dating of the site, is that the midden from within these enclosures is in some cases inverted. The older stuff is at the top, the younger stuff is at the bottom.
Oh,
that makes sense. And this is why they thought it was buried. It's like they're just throwing material in.
Yeah.
But it could also be from natural collapses of material that have fallen back into the enclosure.
Yeah, they described the material that was in there as in a series of lenses, which is, that's what the soil falls in and makes this sort of lens shape in the hole, and then another set falls in from this side and makes another one, and then so when they dig through, they can see it doesn't have a stratigraphy really like naturally laid sediment, but you can see that it's several different collapses. The size of some of these blocks, like this one.
Oh yeah.
On the right here, look at that thing.
Oh wow, look what you did there.
That's magic.
That's visual.
That is magical. I love that. Yeah, I love how that's what you were showing earlier. Some of the blocks they're like wider, and then the block that fits into it fits perfectly into that little 45-degree angle.
Yeah, this guy's like 6'8". So that gives you an example of how tall this block is.
That's Zhao Ming.
This dude is tall. Then this one on the other side is also an enormous block. But what's really interesting is when you get the corners, right? So the corners here. So I've drawn a line down the corner, and you'll notice that giant block goes around the corner.
Oh my God!
No way. That's like just arrogance. It's like you're showing off,
right? Well, it's interesting because and also you'll see this one here. I didn't make any cool graphics for this one, but it's just like, here's your layer, but nope, let's drop it down a couple of inches for this next part, and let's give it a nice curve. Let's not make it square, just let's make it harder on ourselves. So yeah, you're right. It's kind of a, what is it that, there's a quote from 2001: A Space Odyssey where he was talking about the geometric perfection of the monolith was a kind of mathematical arrogance, is what he said.
Yeah.
And it sort of, I always think of that when you're looking at this stonework, because it's like they're just showing off, dude. So here's another corner in a different part of so you can sort of clearly see the corner line.
Yeah.
Right? And it looks like the corner, like, I don't have good pictures of it here, but when you walk up close and look up, that corner line has a regular radius, like it was drilled from the top all the way down. with a single tool. I don't know if that's how they did it,
Like
but
a
it's
square tool.
like, no, it's not. It's got a round radius, right? So the blocks come in, and then there's a curve where the corner is. It's not a perfect 90 degree. Like there's a tiny bit of a curve. Like there was a bit that was used
Like a 1-inch drill bit, they just went from the top of the wall, just
all the way down.
drilled all the way down to the ground.
So yeah, so that's the corner.
Now,
but
I'm
then-
not saying that's what they did.
Right.
It's what it looks like.
Right,
It's
right.
like the radius is the same.
and there's and it's continuous across the blocks. But also look, this block goes around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
This block goes around
Both
the corner.
all three of those go around the
This
corner.
block goes around the corner, and this one goes around the corner. Here's a picture of another.
Oh my God.
So see that-
what the fuck?
Yeah, and notice the radius of the corner, like it's
Yes,
a continuous
it is
line going all the way
perfect.
down. Yeah,
It
And
is a
it's-
tool.
yeah,
It's clearly, it looks different than the faces of the wall.
yeah.
Like it
It's
just
got a
stands
different-
out.
Yeah, it's got a different sort of aspect to it, and then you
Different
can see
grinding.
this one around the corner, that one goes around the corner, this one
The
goes around
sun,
the corner.
yeah, reflects differently than the rest of it. Like
Yes.
it's-
And all the way up. They go around the corner and they mostly alternate. And then, just this is my favorite, right? Just in case you're in doubt about blocks going around the corner.
Yeah.
You got this block.
Oh my God.
It is the
dude.
fucking corner. So you start to think, how big was this initially? Like this block has to go deep into the wall to the right and deep into the wall to the left and all the way back into the, that's a big damn block right there. And they've just cut one corner of it off to make it the corner of this wall.
That's absurd.
So this is what we came up with. Let's say that you want to have
This is a top-down view.
a top-down view. You want to make a chamber like we were just looking at,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So you build big limestone casing blocks, and you make a big rectangular chamber here with limestone casing blocks. Then you case the interior in irregular granite, sort of
Okay.
puffy, irregular granite. Now notice when you're looking at these that none of these blocks, these granite blocks, go around any corners.
Right.
Okay. Then you go out onto the top of those granite blocks and you find the place where you want the actual interior wall to be. This is where you want the surfaces of the wall to be. It's inside the stone right now.
Okay.
See? Then you drill 4 holes at the corners of that interior future wall. Then you go in with your magic granite flattening tool, whatever that is, and you remove all that granite. Now you have 4 blocks that go around corners.
Yep. That makes total sense.
Yep.
We know that they were facing the granite. So if you had 6 or 8 inches, we know that they were facing that pyramid at least, 18 inches deep.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're going to go face it, this is what's going to happen in an inside corner.
And there's places we can look at later, like the Osirian, where they were in the process of facing the wall, and we can look at that too.
Yeah, the Osirian stuff is nuts.
Yeah.
man.
Well, one more thing in the Valley Temple is I'll just show you some of the joins. I'm just putting my fingers up there for reference, but there's a horizontal join and a vertical one here, right here,
It's flawless.
and here. They're almost invisible.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. You can
Yeah.
barely. The only reason you can see it is because there's like
Erosion.
there's erosion and there's slight discontinuities in the crystalline structures, basically.
Right. Otherwise, it would be invisible.
Yeah. So
It's just so crazy that
this
there's
is another one.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. So that's this is an outside corner. And it's also very heavily eroded. It's really interesting how deeply eroded this granite is. And granite is, not a weak stone. How long does it take for it to basically begin to decompose like this?
It is one of the hardest stones, right? It's like one of the top 3 hardest stones.
Yeah, it's a 7, I think, on the Mohs
7,
scale.
yeah.
9 being, or is it diamond is a 10 or is it a 9? I can't remember. I think it's a 10.
I thought it was a 10.
Yeah. So it's 7. And, we had a geologist on one of the tours with us, and he would look at this, he'd stand there looking at this, this decomposition of the granite, and he's just like, I'm like, how long does this take, Chuck? And he's like, a long time. A long time. He wouldn't commit to a number. He just said a long damn time.
Right.
Jeez.
So
Yeah.
it's just so wild to me. Like, just try to imagine what those tools would have looked like. And there's zero evidence of any of these tools and no remains
Yeah.
from any of these machines that they would have used to do this.
No known. Yeah. I
known.
would love for there to be, someday somebody finds an unopened tool
An unopened one.
chamber.
Well, Chris Dunn talks about you've heard about him, the tuning forks that he mentions.
Yeah. You mean the ones at the base of the staffs? Is that what you're talking about? Or-
He said there was a row of giant tuning forks in the Grand Gallery going up to the King's Chamber.
Oh,
metal tuning forks, because he shows that they're like the shapes of them. What he hypothesizes they would have looked like whenever the explosion happened in the King's Chamber. It would have been like a electronic explosion, and there's burn marks on the top of the Grand Gallery going all the way up where those tuning forks would have been. And he superimposed a graphic showing what they looked like. And he thinks that somebody stole those tuning. I don't know if maybe there's a theory.
The Helmholtz resonators? Is
That's
that what
what I
it's
was
talking
thinking.
about?
Maybe.
They're
But
kind of a tuning fork.
there's
sort
a
of.
conspiracy theory I found out there that somebody found a photo of some of these tuning forks. They're like hidden away somewhere.
Oh, man.
And somebody like stripped them out of there and they're hiding them somewhere.
Yeah, that's believable, because if you have ancient tools and they're made of metals and other valuable things, and then civilization collapses and a long time goes by, and then you have people who are just trying to survive, and they find sort of rusting, degrading remnants of tools, they're going to peel bits of metal off to make knives,
Right.
spears.
Right.
They're going to scavenge it. And whatever time doesn't destroy, people will destroy if they can.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
there's just going to be nothing left. And
But if they used, hypothetically, if they were using diamond cutters to cut this stuff, we would still have the diamonds, like the remnants of the diamond, right?
well, our
Because of-
diamond cutters are coated in dust.
Yeah, there's an entire desert full of sand.
Yeah, and it's
You try to find a
sandy
diamond in
desert.
those grains.
We talked about this. Yeah, you're just sifting sand, hoping that one of those little bits of silica is actually a diamond. It's a
Yeah, but wouldn't the structural integrity of the diamond, if it was a blade, wouldn't it still be intact, or would it erode to dust?
Oh,
No,
well, we're
it-
thinking of dust to start with. So you have if they
our diamond blades are just coated in diamond dust.
Oh, ours are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the cheapest
So,
kind
like,
of diamond to get, is like this dusty bort stuff, right?
you get a metal blade and you have some way of setting the diamonds into the metal. So as the metal is wearing away, it wears away, and there's a new diamond in there.
Oh,
And that
that's how
starts
they do
scratching
it.
the stone until that one gets worn off, falls out, and then there's more underneath, and you can keep wearing that blade down that's got embedded with diamond. Studded. But
yeah,
I understand. I was picturing like a pure diamond saw blade. Now, what is your guys' theory on what the purpose of these boxes was?
I like destroying theories about the purpose of the boxes.
Our favorite thing is to ask people to send us their theories, and we destroy them.
I was trying to pry this out of Chris, and it was like pulling teeth.
The thing that I think
He
they
had
make
it.
a really good hermetic seal. If you have enough precision on the lid and the box itself, they would basically ring together.
Yeah.
It's a way of, it's some kind of adhesion that happens
Like
when
a
you have
molecular
very
adhesion.
flat
Yeah.
surfaces that touch each other. You can't pull them apart. You could slide them against each other, but you can't actually pull them apart. They
Right.
make these sets of blocks to use to measure precision. They're precision
like
measuring
gauges.
tools
Yeah.
that you can take different thicknesses of block. Well, you need a certain length, so you grab a couple of different blocks and you ring them together. You can't pull them apart.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you can imagine a fine, precise, flat surface on the lid and the box, and you slide those lids together, then you may have a hermetic seal, so that you could contain something for a long period of time without it oxidizing or whatever, being destroyed.
They
in some
also
way.
they
yeah.
also act as a kind of a technological gate or a safe.
yeah.
Right. Like it's so heavy and so massive and in such a tight enclosure that without some kind of technology, like rope, capstan, wheels, the idea of the lever and pulley, you're not going to be able to open them. So you could effectively lock away something in these boxes from anybody that's not primitive, not advanced enough to open the box.
And I love the idea that, because all these boxes were empty when they were found in modern times.
Right.
I love the idea that they used to have something in them, and whoever came and opened all but one of these boxes knew the contents. They knew what was in them because they left one box unopened and it had nothing in it.
It was blown open in modern times, and it was also empty.
So if you
Well, how do we know that whoever blew it open didn't find what was?
Well,
in there?
was that Mariette that did that?
I think we couldn't figure that out.
Was it Vise or Mariette?
I thought it was Vise.
It could have been Vise. Yeah,
Vise.
he liked to
Howard
use
Vise.
like gunpowder on stuff. Yeah.
Gosh,
yeah, some of the corners of these boxes
Vice,
are blown
yeah.
off
I'm just telling you what is in the record. That box was blown open and it was empty.
Okay.
And he would have loved to have found like the
Right.
Apis bull or something in there.
Right.
So it's just if this was a vault that contained, for example, documents or some kind of knowledge, that, and that's what I'm saying. I just love this idea that somebody that had the knowledge of where they were and what contents were in the boxes would have come, opened them up, removed the contents, and never touched the one that was empty.
Yeah. Yeah, leave box number 13 alone. It's empty, but open all the rest of them.
And
right?
get the contents out of it.
Yeah. And they're all open. They're all open to just a certain amount, just like this.
Like if you were a bank robber and you went to rob all the safety deposit boxes and you had information on which ones had stuff in them, you would only open those.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm suggesting here.
they're not marked, are they?
Some of them have writing on them, one or two.
Now, when I asked Chris about this, he said he was very careful about giving just random theories about what he thinks they could be without evidence.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with that.
Because he writes books and he wants to be taken seriously, and he doesn't want people to clip something he said out of context and say, "Oh, this guy's a crackpot," which is fine. But when I was asking him, I was like really trying to drill down on like what he thinks they were. He said, I need to read the book called Engines of Creation to understand what they were.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of that book?
Nope.
But I did listen to that show, so I need to read that book also. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember him saying that now that you mention it.
And he was saying there's a theory.
Is it like some kind of battery?
Well, yeah. So something about like crystals were grown in there. Or something was grown.
Oh yeah, you could do that. That's cool.
You could grow, yeah. Yeah.
So you grow a giant crystal in there, and then we get the crystals out.
And then crystals turn into laser beams, which cut the stones.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like,
Yeah. Then what?
and then we put the lid back on.
Put the crystals in the pyramid so they vibrate.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a lot of missing stuff too. This is the other thing about going through these sites in Egypt is that, like Kyle was saying earlier, thousands of years of people have been going in and out of these places,
Right.
taking things, breaking stuff, removing
Right.
stuff, stealing stuff, adding things, putting candles in, setting fires on things,
Right.
Worshipping stuff.
worshiping things, letting camels live in there and goats, and then of course there's all the environmental stuff, wind and sand and precipitation and just time. And so every one of these vaults that had a box in it also had two granite slabs to either side of each box that had false doors carved into them. There's a couple that are left, but most of them are all gone. So then you start to see a picture of like, okay, there's a box and it's in its own particular alcove, and to either side are granite slabs facing it with these false doors cut into it. And so what does that mean? Does that make it some kind of resonance chamber? I don't know.
I find it hard to believe because, this box doesn't want to move. It really badly wants to stay still.
Yeah.
This is not, but, the sound waves inside, they like to be sustained. I mean, they're echoing, bouncing back and forth across the walls. So you go in there, and when you hit the fundamental frequency of, like, say, the width of the box, it's
overpowering.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's incredible. And then you can find the one that's the height, and the width to the height they're slightly off, so they're a little dissonant. And if you can kind of get them both, they put this third beat in there, and it's just wild. It's
Yeah, and then the
it's
length
incredible.
of the box is pretty deep and
really hard to reach with my voice.
hard to
but
reach.
You need a deep voice to be able to get the length frequency. But yeah, it's hard to imagine that. okay, let me get down in there and you slide the box closed so that I can resonate the box and, reach enlightenment.
Yeah.
You're going to let me out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I don't know about that as a purpose.
Fuck, man.
It's just that to me seems to be that's just a result of whatever the actual function was, because the function resulted in these geometric proportions that make the sound resonance inside amazing.
This is a good example of they're aiming for this kind of perfection. Like, look at this edge.
The edge is like a razor.
It is perfect. This prism shape that they're going for, is awesome. But then they, for some reason, have scooped material off the front edge here, and then polished it, right? Yeah,
Why?
the scoops are all polished too, and it's hard to see the polish because of the dust.
Yeah,
but it is it's like a mirror. There's a giant scoop taken out of that one.
Yeah, that one looks crazy.
So and then you see they smoothed it and polished it, right? So they're very concerned with removing, for whatever reason, whatever was contained in this part of the material, but then they carefully polish the remnant.
There are certain inclusions. You can see this in the quarry. Not the quarry where these came from. I don't think anybody knows where the quarry where these came from.
Oh, really?
But the Aswan
this particular
quarry,
kind of diorite, this dark.
there will be
granite.
spots in the wall where you can just see like a completely different type of rock,
Yeah.
just stuck like a chunk. So I'm wondering if maybe some of the scoops were just like, let's get that different type of stone out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can see on this one, they cut the entire back corner off of they've cut this whole bevel off there. And then on this one, they've done it to the front side. They've completely chopped the entire front edge off of there for some reason, and then polished it. Right, you can see how shiny it is.
Right. Well, you said it was also really important that they didn't want cracks in there to remain and keep the integrity of them.
Yeah,
so if there were cracks, they wanted to scoop them out.
That's a question. Like, is that what they were doing?
That is incredible.
Yeah.
How big that is.
Right.
Yeah.
You can walk underneath. So we're all standing on a wooden floor that's been built, that's raised up above the floor the box is sitting on. And yet you can still walk beneath the lid standing up straight. So the boxes are enormous.
Unbelievable, man.
You got to have them.
And that lid was moved how? We don't know.
Who opened them? They were opened in antiquity, so nobody really knows. I don't know who opened them. And they're all, like I said, if you've paid attention, they're all just slid open a little bit, right? Just enough to get inside. In some cases, I'm not sure you could actually
how you
squeeze
could get
in
in
there.
that.
You can get in most of them.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah. It's like 3 feet
Yeah.
off this end.
Yeah. There's an opening in the back you can get into
I see.
for sure. Yeah, because you can see how far.
And how would you even move that top part? Like today, if you wanted to move it, how the fuck would you do that? In that tiny little space.
Yeah.
You could use hydraulics
Yeah.
up against the walls.
Yeah.
This is bedrock walls.
You could be,
Oh, okay.
You can put a lot of force against those walls. They're not going anywhere.
frame it out with something, wrap it in cable, and get some winches. And I have no idea.
Pushing it would be
Pushing
easier.
it would be easier than pulling on it. Yeah. Which is interesting because a lot of them are pushed. The lids are shifted towards the central walkway from the back, which
suggests you put something.
They put something against the wall, and
Right.
Here's Kyle. This kind of gives you the scale, right? That's Kyle standing on the upper edge of one of the. This is a box made of the rose granite, so it's different than
Could
the
be
rest of
from
them. Yeah,
Aswan.
yeah.
And it has no lid?
The lid is in the hallway. It's
Gigantic, and it has
lighter.
bosses. It has the nubs on it.
yeah. There he is
really?
down inside the
Is he praying?
interior. This is
I was trying.
completely legal science.
I prayed.
Totally legal. Is he praying?
I was praying.
Praying to the box god.
Please tell me what these were
So
for.
the inside of that thing doesn't look smooth.
Yeah, this one isn't finished in the same way that the rest of them are. You can
Right.
see on the outside here, it's it's beautiful still, but it isn't polished like the other ones. This just kind of shows you. The other thing is that the question about how did they get them in there, they weigh a lot and they're enormous, and There's no like dropping the boxes in and then building the roof because this is all cut into the bedrock. These
Right.
these are tunnels that were just basically drilled through the bedrock.
Right.
So they had to maneuver them through these long hallways.
And they were almost as wide as the hallways themselves.
yeah, like this one.
Holy
What the?
shit.
What?
So this one, this
It's
is
magic.
This
It's
is another.
magic.
Yeah,
It's got to be magic.
this is another point of the whole unfinished concept. Like they didn't finish the job. They were in the middle of transporting boxes to their places in their alcoves, and they didn't quite get it done. Most of the boxes are in place. They're polished. They're finished out. But this one is rough cut. It isn't polished, and it hasn't been completely moved into place yet.
And its lid is also sitting in
Its
the
lid is
hallway.
laying in the hallway too.
Near the entrance.
It looks like if the lid was on it, it almost wouldn't fit.
Right. That's. It does seem like there's
Unless the lid was brought in separately.
There's two ways to look at this. Like that may be why they're moving this one without the lid. That
Right.
also might be why the lids have bevels.
Those angles.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why you would want to move them together. That
It
makes
just
the job
makes
even
it harder.
harder.
Yeah, move them separately.
Man, this is the biggest fucking mystery.
So
This is showing you the scale. And again, remember that he's standing on a raised platform. The box is sitting on the original floor.
Yeah.
Like 6 or 7 inches
And
down.
they built
farther.
the floor around the fucking
But it's
box.
still taller than he is. You have to look up to see the edge of the box.
if you need to get past this to get to the other boxes, and you open up those other boxes to get shit out, how do you get it past
There
here?
are two
Right.
ways out.
Oh, there's
There are
two ways
more
out,
than
okay.
actually. I think there are probably 3 ways out, and maybe possibly more. We haven't. There are some places down here that are still just closed off, and some collapsed.
Oh,
I can go back to the map here.
Oh, okay.
This is the box that we're looking at in the hallway. This is its lid.
Wow.
So this is the all the beautiful, like we showed you a bunch of pictures of these guys in these, and look how they're kind of staggered. None of them are like exactly facing each other. It's really interesting. This whole thing looks like a key, right? So you got this box, and then there's a space. That space is opposite this other box. So there's always a wall facing the alcove. Like if you needed to mount machinery to work on this box and get it in place, you have a place to mount it right here,
Or push it,
or push it to get it in there. And then each alcove is a deep hole, right? So you're walking in these hallways, and then where the boxes are
Lower.
they're set down lower to the point to where the lids are almost at foot level, like so that you can kind of just slide the lid in on top of the box. It's interesting how it's set up like that. So yeah, this is what we were looking at. Let me go back to where we were.
Thanks, Gregor, for the map.
We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
dude,
Gregor.
this is incredible. I've never seen any kind of map of this like that. It really puts it into perspective. It's great.
And yeah, you can see how this box is. It's a little wonky. Like they haven't.
It is.
They haven't.
A little wavy.
They've made it. It's going to be a box. It's hollowed out. And it's got a lid, but they haven't flattened it and polished it and this also implies that they did all that
on site.
in its place. They weren't doing it on the surface and then moving them down in, which is another interesting implication about precision.
What is your guys' wildest out there theory of what the pyramids were?
I think part of our thing is like we have no idea.
Yeah.
We've gone through
Sometimes
so many.
I think that's the wildest thing that we say because people are like, what do you think it is? And we're like, we don't know. And then people are like, what?
Yeah.
You don't have any idea? Right?
It's just like
What's
you
your
look at-
favorite theory?
Here's what I will say about it. It's hard to believe that a society would support a system that required that immense amount of labor and planning and engineering and all that for no other reason than to bury like one tyrant.
100%.
Yeah.
So the question I ask is what did it provide the civilization or the society of people that agreed to do this? Now, people make the argument, that was they just had slaves and they just made them do whatever they wanted. It's hard to imagine that you could make that work. I don't know. I just think that it had to benefit the society in some way. So I
Yes.
do like Chris Dunn's
the power
idea.
plant idea is cool because it's like it benefits
something.
everyone.
It benefits everyone. Everyone agrees. Like, yes, we should take on this monumental task, right? Because that it's going to benefit society. So it wouldn't surprise me if we found out in some way that it did have a function. And I think
it's really hard to ignore the reverse engineering that Chris has done on it, and the ideas he's come up with, and he's even remodeled some of like the shafts and stuff like that with the chemicals and stuff. He's recreated that to prove that those would have worked in that way.
That's the other thing is there's something that like Yusuf would talk about, the pyramid. Well, it's just part of the pyramid complex. And you get to see this if you go on these tours with Ben and Yusuf. Around these pyramids, there will be other things in the area, which are like granite stones in the pavement, deep under the paving tiles, because the paving around the pyramid is actually gigantic limestone tiles, as big as this table, 4 times as big as this table in some places. Underneath
one
those,
tile the size of this room. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, underneath those are some granite stones that have channels cut into them, like a channel like this that water would flow through or whatever. And they go into or from the pyramid. And so it looks like there's this whole system of like channels that had some liquid possibly moving through them and bowl-shaped stones cut with these tiles over top of them. So something was going on under the floor around the whole pyramid area. Then there's the basalt tiles that show up at various pyramid sites. So it seems like there's a design that has multiple things outside the pyramid that are always around it that also suggests some kind of function. And, people have looked at the possibility of
it's like
chemical
chemistry,
processing.
metallurgy, like...
It wouldn't surprise me if it would ultimately be found out someday to be something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that some fucking billionaire hasn't just paid a bunch of money to have it reverse engineered and recreated to see if they could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, bro, if I had $1 billion,
I mean, think about it. You could
I'd
buy
be
a
out of
pyramid
space.
in my yard.
you could reverse engineer or try to recreate the pyramid into a functioning thing. At least try to do it for less than you could buy Twitter for.
Wow.
It would cost less money.
You're right.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's the question. Like, would it actually cost less money than Twitter did? We don't know how expensive. You would need to say, you'd need to get a team of people, engineers and people, and be like, price this out for me.
I think Chris said it would be around $1 billion.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he
Okay.
said that on the podcast.
Listen, billionaires,
Does NASA really
our
own
area
the
of
entire
the country is a
we-
great place to build a pyramid.
Yeah, we have land if you would like to build a pyramid.
There's
on it.
limestone there.
Is
There's
it
granite. There's red granite nearby in a giant batholith.
Yep.
So come on down to the Texas Hill Country.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what Chris was saying. If you wanted to rebuild the pyramid, you'd do it. There's a place in Texas that you would do it.
Yeah.
There's a place in Texas that has more of these. What are they called? Those lights that come out of the ground.
Marfa.
Marfa,
Texas.
yes, Marfa, Texas. That's what it was.
Yeah, he was talking about building it near the Earth energies. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Because
could build it out in that plane.
that's his newest theory, the Tesla connection. His newest theory on it is that there was some sort of a jackhammer or device in the subterranean chamber that would like pound the ground and create seismic vibrations in the igneous rock beneath the pyramid that would create electron flow.
Oh, piezoelectric flow.
Yeah, up through the base of the pyramid, because it's 14 acres, I think it is,
Yeah,
the full
between
base.
13 and 14 acres.
Between 13 and 14 acres, and that would capture all that electron flow up through the bottom chamber, through the grand gallery, into the main chamber, and then around the edges there's these pits where they would pour chemicals that would somehow turn into liquid hydrogen that would then come down the shafts, and that would somehow create some sort of chemical reaction in the queen's chamber going up through the king's chamber. I can't remember it perfectly, but
And this is where, and then microwaves are being run through
the
it or
microwaves.
something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then he
it's
thought there
making
was
a maser or something like that,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's like a power plant idea that is it's like really fascinating, and it also points to an almost completely different like line of thought in terms of generating power than we have in our modern times. We have we basically let's heat something up, Let's heat up water, turn it into steam, make the steam spin something, and then we can run magnets on the spinning thing and get electricity.
Right.
This is a completely different mindset, which is really interesting.
This would have been free energy, right? Because he says there was a dome that was constructed around the pyramid.
Well, you'd have to build.
You need $1 billion,
first.
so it's not free.
right. No, but what I mean by it is that the pyramids. His theory is that the pyramids would have put out this whatever energy they created, and in his hypothesis, would have created this free energy that you could just get out of the air.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Like thinking of Tesla's wireless transmission.
Exactly.
Of power. Yeah.
Exactly. Like his tower. What was his tower called?
Wardenclyffe Tower.
Wardenclyffe Tower. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was talking about actually turning a layer of the atmosphere into
ionizing
a layer of the atmosphere into a very good conductor. And then if you attach that to a source of electricity, then you can just plug into it anywhere else on the planet and draw power from it. Now that would put load on the source,
but also that the source might possibly become the sun.
It could
right?
be, yes, because the sun is dumping an enormous amount of energy into the atmosphere all the time. So it could become a sort of free energy-ish thing. You know, it's like the kind of thing
you'd
where
have to build a tower anywhere you wanted to grab it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then the other two pyramids, he says that those could have been like backups, like backup generators or something.
Backup generators or test sites or who knows.
Right.
Yeah. I love those kinds of ideas. And the great thing about that is it's just like, let's do that, you know? But the idea that they were tombs is just, no bodies were found, you know, like there's no writing.
Right.
We've been in tombs in Egypt. They're full of beautiful artwork and writing. I mean, just covered. Every wall and the ceiling tells you a story. There's stars. It was painted.
The tunnels are big enough for like a procession of people to carry the body in, you know, a box or whatever, all the way down to the bottom, and then
there's
lay
traps
it in the box. Yeah, there's big traps.
Yeah, pit traps with enormous stone doors on the other side. You know, it's that you can tell it's a tomb, and then you get in the pyramid, and it's more like walking around in a machine.
Right. Yeah, he talks about that NASA engineer Friedman Freund.
This is in the new book?
Freund, yeah, in the new book.
Sorry, Chris. I have the new book. I haven't started reading it yet. Yeah.
It's fucking
great.
I
can't wait, yeah.
And Friedman Freund he's known for his study on the earthquake lights. So I guess there's a bunch of places around the world where he found there's the most seismic activity. And it could be days or weeks before an earthquake happens. There's these lights that come up out of the earth and they show up in the atmosphere. They look like UFOs. People have mistaken them for UFOs before. And his sort of theory on this and what he wanted to test is this could be a way to be early detection for earthquakes, to avoid catastrophe during earthquakes. So if you see these earthquake lights coming out and you're in a seismic activity, evacuate because there's going to be an earthquake. And it was proven. He proved that this actually happened. They did tests, they did studies, and they measured exactly when these earthquake lights would come out of the ground and how much longer after that there would be an earthquake. And it's fascinating.
I do remember you talking with Chris about this on your show. Yeah.
And then so what he did was they took two big pieces of granite, these big like long square chunks of granite, and they brought them into a lab and they put some sort of electronic conductors on the ends of them and they rubbed them together, and they found out it made electricity when they rubbed these pieces of granite together.
Yeah.
That really fucking blew my mind.
Like a piezoelectric effect, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
flexing the quartz crystals in the granite is going to generate electrical charge.